Yeah, today we will see in what an industry anticipates from an entry-level C++ developer. So this is what we'll be seeing here. So the main thing is when we are coming for C++, they need to differentiate between the C and the C++. That is nothing but the structural programming and object-oriented programming. How structural program behaves and how object-oriented program behaves and what is its benefits. So that should be their main focus. So the main focus is procedures and functions in structure. Here we in object oriented we have object classes and inheritance. Datas and functionality. Datas and functions are often separate. Here we have encapsulation of data and functions. In object oriented what we have something like private, public, protected, which helps us in encapsulating the data. And here inheritance is not there, or it is not so much supported or not at all there in structural programming. But when we go for object oriented, it supports inheritance and polymorphism. It's there. Abstraction, limited abstraction here, but here we have high level abstraction through classes and objects. So that is the major thing. Modularity approach, here in structure we see it only by using functions, but in object oriented programming we have classes and objects. So the major advantage is you can split it into different modules and give it to different developers and make them to work out, so that at the end you can combine together all this and make it as a single unit or single application and you can run it. But this is very much difficult when you compare with the normal structural programming where you use only functions. Then comes code reusability. Here we use functions only for code reusability, but there we have inheritance as a major thing for reusability. That is a parent class, a child class concept is there, and it inherits the properties of the parent, and you can easily go from that. And so it supports very much when we are using inheritance there, which is not in a structured program. Then data sharing often uses parameters or global. Here we have a global only. If you want to share, the only possible way is you need to declare them as a global. But here we have something like encapsulation, where you see that say that the data is public or protected and or private. So making it visibility to whom you want to show the data, and for them alone it will be visible. So that is the first basic thing which is required when he enters a C++ from a C environment. Then the candidate should be very much in what is the different types of variables, how the local variables varies, what is the scope of it. So if it is within a parenthesis or within a function, so we call it as a local variables. Global function, when it is declared, it can be accessed from anywhere. And member variables, when it becomes an object property of characters, so that is there. And static variables, these static and constant variables, we don't find very much differentiating. The candidates are not able to differentiate between this. So static variables is associated with the class or function. It retains its value between the function calls, usually maintains the state across the function call. So what is it? It is between the function and calls, it will be static. Constant means once if you have declared, that's it, it will be fixed for throughout the thing. And pointer variables means holds the memory address of another variable, so that should be there. A reference variable provides an alias of an existing variable. Then volatile variable, so its value can be changed without the without any intervention of a code or without anything, so that is known as volatile variables. Register variables, this is actually used for speeding up your process. When you are declaring as a register values, it's very much faster, but certain compilers may not honor this type of thing. So but these are the different type different variable types that we have. Then comes to data types. This is a straightforward. For any programming language you will have this int, float, double, character, boolean, sort, long, unsigned and signed variables. I am not going deep into this because it is very much common to any language that you are learning. Then comes operators. So operators, we have arithmetic operators, addition arithmetic operators, straightforward. Increment operator, in incrementing operator there should be a clarity with the plus plus and minus minus, post increment or pre increment. Say for example, if we take something like this, something like this, what is the difference between a equal to a plus plus? So when we give it a equal to a plus plus, so what does it means? First it will assign the value. So if a equal to 5, I'm giving as a equal to 5, and here I'm giving it as b equal to a plus plus. First it will assign the value, and then it will increment. So b will get the value of 5, then only a value will be changed into 6. So this is nothing but post increment. And pre increment, if we are giving as b equal to, so plus plus a, if we are giving, so if it is plus plus a or plus minus minus a, whatever if we give, and if the case is a equal to 5, now what it will do, it will first increment the value of a. So a will first change into 6, and then it will assign the value to b. So b will be value will be, say, 6 in this case, but in this case it will be b value will be 5. So those difference they should know, what is a pre increment, what is a post increment, assignment operators, then compound assignment. So plus equal to, so that is nothing but when you give it as a equal to if you are giving as a equal to a plus 1, it is another way you can write it as a plus equal to 1. So that they should be having the knowledge. Then we have relational operators, equal, double equal to, not equal to, less than, greater than or equal to. So these are the things that we have. Then logical operators, and or not. So and means which satisfies, it should satisfy both the conditions, or means any one, and not means it should not satisfy both the conditions. So those things. And bitwise, and or not is there. Then left shift, right shift down is, and ternary operators using. So usually we go for the if statements. No, if condition is true, what needs to be done for true statement, and what needs to be done for a false statement, those things. Then member access, that dot and giving as a object pointer, so pointers in object. So these are the operators that we have, that the candidate should be very clear enough in this category. Then coming to the conditional statements, there are different conditional statements. It's very straightforward in all languages. Here we have if statement, if else statement, nested if statements can be there, switch statement. So he should be very clear in saying that for nested if he could go for switch statement, and also a ternary operator where it is it's a positive or non-positive, so something like this. So these are some conditional operators which he needs to know at this case. This is a very basic thing. And in looping statements he should be very clear. So syntax, definitely, so I have mentioned the syntax here also. This syntax has to be common. What needs to be there or understood, that's what we are discussing here. So here he should know what is a while loop and do while loop, and he should need to differentiate between them also. So what is the difference? At least this will run only if the condition is true, but this will run even if the condition is false for the one time. So there will be a one time execution. So those things he should know. Then for loops, range based loops. So this is particularly in C++ 11. So if you go for C++ 11 concept, they have introduced range based looping statements also. So these things they should be aware of. Then comes the break and continue statement. So where we will be using break and continue. So when we give a break, instantly it comes out of it. Maybe if you are inside a parenthesis, or even if you are in a switch statement, it directly breaks it and comes out of it. But what is the continue? Continue means the statement which is next to continue will not be executed. Say for example, if you are running in a for loop and there is a few statements till the end of for to be completed also, continue will not go for executing those statements. Instead it will go with the next iteration. So if the iteration 1 is running, it will skip the certain values, which is certain statements below this, and it will go for a second iteration. That is what we see here. Then we need to know about arrays. So arrays is a very important things that they should know. So what is an array? So it's a data structure that stores fixed size and continuous sequence of elements at the same time. And what is the drawback of it? So usually when they come for C or C++, since pointers are there, they should know why pointers came. So arrays, when you declare it, it becomes a fixed, right? It fixed. Say for what is the disadvantage of it? So if you are keeping a registration page, and tomorrow, you are expecting 100 students to come, and 100 students and come to register, so you declare a variable of 100 and keep it ready for storing. But suddenly what happens if only one student comes, the memory becomes wasted. So 1 or 10 students come, the memory is totally wasted there. And at the same time, if thousands and lakh of students are coming, you will not be able to accommodate. So that is the reason we go for pointers, and we store it to it, and it is much faster also. So that should be there. And the indexing, how it goes from, it starts from zeros, 0 1 2, so that the indexing ratio will be very out. And the element, if the third element, what will be there? So what is the third element? So then what should be the index given? How to calculate the size of an array? How to initialize? So even initializing is nothing but declaration, how you can declare certain variables and use it, and assigning the statements to it, and looping through the arrays. So it is not only that sending, you can even loop through the statement. So that is what is expected here. Then we have certain things like structures, concepts like structures. What do you mean by structures? A user defined composite data that groups together variables of different types. So here something like we are declaring a class called person, and from that you give it as name, age, so something like this. So that is what we will be seeing here. So that is one type of thing you will be having in structures. Then member functions, a variable inside a structure, also known as field or a data member. So that is what is a member is. Declaration and defining structures with members, creating a new data type. You can give it a struct point and give it as index into y. And how to initialize it? It is normally used by a mustache bracket or a parenthesis. So your parenthesis, you will be giving it in this mustache bracket. So array declaration, usually we go with a square bracket, right? Here we use a mustache bracket for doing it. So that is there. Then accessing in person age. So how do we access it? We use as a .th. So it is something similar to the some to what we do for any class when we give object reference, and that object with in that reference we call the function, or we call the variable, right? So that is it. So then comes references. It is just an alias of alternative name of a existing variable, allowing modification of original variables to references. So those things he needs to do be care. And pointers is very much important. He should know what is a pointer is. So variable stores the memory address at any other variable. So variable that stores the memory address of another variable is nothing but address of an operation, retrieve memory address of the variable, and difference operations. What is a null pointer? This is very much important. A pointer does and points to any memory location, we call it as a null pointer. So that should be, he should know. So pointer arithmetics, incrementing, decrementing, so that is there. Pointers to an array. So pointers can be used for reference elements in an array. That should be known by the candidate. Pointers to functions. Pointers can point to functions, allowing dynamic function calls. So that is one thing that he needs to. Then coming to a normal function, a block. What is a function? Just a block of code performing a specific task when called. So when you say something like addition of two numbers, you can give it, and so how do you declare it? So you just give it as int add, and in the parentheses you give something as int a and int b. So that is, you need to pass these values to this function and get it. So defining it is nothing but giving the things which has to be done here. So it is and what is the return type of it? In the return type, int is the return type. That means what is it returning? So a plus b is going to be an integer value. So what is the return type here? What are the parameters? That is one. And a and b are just a parameters which is passed to it. What are the arguments to be here. So these are the parameters. Arguments means when you are calling the function, you give it as a add 3 comma 5, that is you are passing these values to the function, that becomes an argument. So that is nothing but the function call result add something like the same passing the arguments. And void function means it is not returning any data type, so nothing is returned. So if you give return, it should definitely have a return type specified in here. If you are not going returning anything, you are just going to print it out as, or you are just giving an output then and there, and you are not retrieving that, then it go for a void. Then comes function overloading. So function overloading is nothing but it will have the same function name with different parameter types. Say for example, here you can see there is a add function which is used with a different, just one minute. So what is it? You are using a add function. Here it is int a and int b. Here you are given as float add int. So the function remains the same as add. There is no change in the function name, but the inside the parameters are changed. It is not only that the number of data type for this parameters. Even if you go for additional parameters also, that is also a different thing. So function overloading is that. Then recursion function which calls itself is known as a recursive function. So usually we go for the factorial of a number, finding the factorial of a number, we do this. It is something representing a for loop. So in certain cases of for loops also you can use this and take it. Then comes the main things of object-oriented programming. What is a class? What is an object? So class is a blueprint or a template for creating objects that defines the attribute of members and behaviors. So that is very important here, classes. And comes the objects. So objects is nothing but the instance of a class. So here you have a blueprint. Say for example, here is a student registration. You are creating this. You can create 2 or 3 students registration and run it parallelly. So here in this case it is a class car is there, car my car. So you are creating an instance of this, that is you are creating one copy of this and you are using it as a my car. You can go for multiple copies also, that is there. Then members, what are the members of it? So member functions, a class having the member functions or member variables that could be there. What is the protection that you are giving? That is encapsulation. How do you access the data? So it should public or private, that should be none. And constructor. So this is where they should be, we see certain lack in certain students. So when they go for constructor and destructor. So constructor, how does it comes? So constructor, when you are initializing an object itself, the execution happens, that is nothing but a constructor. So if you want, say for example, if there is a class where you are giving a registration page, and for every registration you are allowing only for age group of 18 plus, in that case it becomes a default thing, right? In those things you can write as a constructor, because every time you need to check it, so that needs to be checked first and then only the other consecutive operations has to happen. So those things can be defined in a constructor. And destructor usually meant for memory release, or what has happened when the scope of the scope of the class is closed, or scope of the function is closed, we call it as a destructor, which is an auto execution. You will not be calling it specifically. So that is what is method. Then we go for methods, encapsulation, inheritance. So what are the different types of inheritance? Encapsulation we have already discussed. Methods, we have methods is nothing but a function, right? A function definition within a class, we call it as a method. That's all. So encapsulation, we go for private, public behaviors, right? So those things are there. Inheritance. Inheritance means different types of inheritance are the single inheritance, multi-level inheritance, hybrid inheritance. So those things of inheritance he should be here. Polymorphism, the ability of the object to ask different classes to a common interface, that is achieving a virtual function and inheritance. Same function name with different parameters having, it is known as a polymorphism. So those things he is be able to abstract. Then abstraction, hiding complex implementation details and showing only the necessary features. So these are the things which is more expected in this. And inheritance, what is in inheritance, we saw that what are the different types of inheritance. At the same time, he should know what is a base class and what is a subclass also. So base class is nothing but a parent class, and subclass is nothing but usually we go for a child class and see. So what are the access specifiers? How do we access it? Which is publicly accessible, protected, or private? So those things, what is protected, that what is public, private, so those things he should be very clear. So access specifier that allows inherited members to access within the subclass and it is derived class but not outside, then we call it as a protected. Then if you go for a public, and access specifier that allows inheritance members to access both within the subclass and from outside. If you are trying to give it from outside also, then it becomes public. Private means an access specifier that makes inheritance inaccessible from outside the subclass. So access specifier that makes inherited members inaccessible from outside the subclass. That means even the inherited class will not be altered. So when you are giving as public, it is can be accessed. For protected, it can be accessed from the class and also from the inheritance that allows inherited. So if you are using a single inheritance, the parent class and the base class both will be able to access a protected variable. But when it is public, it can be accessed outside also. When it goes to private, it will not be able to access even if it is inherited. That should be the. Then what is method over riding method, hiding multiple inheritance, virtual functions. A function declared as a virtual is a base class to enable the runtime polymorphism through a dynamic binding. So those things he should be clear. I am just giving the overview what is expected from a C++. In depth you have to go through this. This is not that only if this is covered. So what are the topics that needs to be mainly focused on? That's what we are discussing here. Then comes polymorphism, the ability of, so it is just the ability of objects of different classes to be treated as object as a common base class. Then compile time polymorphism, runtime polymorphism. He should know the difference between this. So what is a compile time polymorphism and what is a runtime polymorphism? What is a base class, that is word known? What is a derived class? Virtual function. So it is something like a repetition you mentioned, overridden, dynamic binding. How do you dynamically the process of determining the operative functions in a call runtime, enabling runtime polymorphism. So this is what is expected here. Then we come for error handling, so exceptions. So this is very important, so that the program doesn't crashes. So what happens if you are not handling this error? If some exception comes, the system will not be able to know how to handle it and it just breaks it. So it usually, if you are going for an Android mobile application, the total mobile app is going to get cached. Here also this application is going to crash. So you should know what is an exception and how to handle it, how to use a try block, how to use a catch block, how to throw the errors, what are the exceptions types here, standard expectations, customer expectations, stack unwinding, try catch, and non-except, no except. So the specifier used to identify the function that won't throw exception, so no exception. So those things also should be very clear to him. So that's all is expected from the candidate of this. And what kind of questions will be in that? So what are the different types of questions that will be asked, that we will also see here. Just a minute.